My Uncle Gary is a lobsterman off the coast of Maine. Such work is pretty noble for a native of Maine, but the story isn't really about catching lobsters. It's about what Uncle Gary caught and how it haunted him. Uncle Gary likes to drink beer at the Rusty Spoke after a long day of working on the water. He can be found there most any night, having a beer and talking about his catch. Uncle Gary is also fond of what people call fish stories. If you caught a 2-pound lobster, then Uncle Gary caught a 5-pound lobster. If you caught a swordfish, Uncle Gary caught a hammerhead. If you caught a tuna, then Uncle Gary caught a whale. You see where I'm going with this. My brother and my dad and I also work as fishermen, though we're out catching halibut and mackerel instead of lobster. Dad likes to say that Uncle Gary usually goes down to the Spoke because otherwise he'd have to go home to his wife, and those of us who knew Aunt Sheila understood why nobody wants to do that. Uncle Gary had been having a pretty good month, it seemed. He's been buying rounds for people, he's been fixing up his house, and I'm pretty sure I saw a new boat out in the harbor. I don't know where he's fishing at, but the wharf master says he's been bringing in a lot of lobster lately. Big ones, too. Numbers that the local guys who track these kinds of things are scratching their heads at. He's been in a great mood, but that mood, it seems, was about to change. We came in today and found Uncle Gary already nursing a pint. We all just shook our heads as we saw him, saying that he must have had another story to tell us. We'd had a good day of fishing, but the second we told him, I was sure that Uncle Gary would claim he'd had a better one. I don't know, though, something about the way he was looking at that pint should have clued me in, but I took a seat next to him and jokingly asked if he'd caught a mermaid or the lost treasure of Atlantis or something, before ordering a drink of my own. Uncle Gary turned to look at me, and when he did, I wished to Christ he hadn't. Poor guy looked like 5 miles of bad ocean, and I was suddenly a little afraid to let him drive home. I caught a lobster, he said, though he didn't sound like he was overly proud of it. A lobster? Dad said. Just one? You sure it wasn't like the Loch Ness Monster or a whale or... But when Uncle Gary turned to look at him, Dad stopped talking. Uncle Gary looked haunted, like whatever he had pulled out of the ocean was right out of H.P. Lovecraft or something. I pulled up a lobster that I shouldn't have, he said. I pulled him up a couple of weeks ago, and he's the only lobster I've caught since. As he spoke, I thought I actually remembered this lobster he was talking about. Uncle Gary had come in 2 weeks ago, talking about how we had found this weird lobster in his trap off a Crack Claw Point. He was huge, his shell all black, his little eyes were red as coals, he told us over beers. He said that he had hauled him up, and one look at him was enough to tell him that he couldn't eat him. This was a rare sort of lobster, the kind you only see once in a lifetime, and he was going to throw him back and keep the story as his only trophy. We'd all scoffed and thought Gary was losing his mind. Who throws back a lobster like that? If you keep catching him, then why don't you sell him or something? My brother asked as he pulled his own pint and started drinking. Well, it's something I left out of the story when I told you fellas, Uncle Gary said as he tore up the coaster that his beer had been on. First time I caught that lobster, he talked to me. We laughed, thinking Uncle Gary was making a joke, but I couldn't. One look at the old guy was enough to tell me that he was absolutely serious. He was just as silent as the grave and twice as serious as he sat there, making little piles out of the coaster and staring at his beer. Let me get this straight, my dad said. You pulled up a solid black lobster that talks out of the ocean, and you, what, just let him go? Uncle Gary nodded. That's all it took to send them laughing again. Couldn't blame them. This was a little different, but It was the same old Uncle Gary game. He was going to come out and tell us some fish story that there was no way was true, and we were going to laugh and say, "Sure, Uncle Gary, sure," like we always did. From my seat, though, I could see how haunted he was, and I wasn't laughing. He was the biggest lobster I ever caught. As I pulled up the lobster pot, I thought I had caught 3 or 4 regular-sized lobsters. The thing weighed about 30 pounds. And the claws on it looked like they could have taken the cage apart if he wanted to. He didn't move, though. He didn't make a noise. He just sat there and looked at me with his little beady lobster eyes that were the color of blood. I was already counting the money I was gonna get for him at the market when all of a sudden he spoke. He spoke in a deep voice, like something out of the pits of hell. I could hear it in my mind instead of my ears. He said if I threw him back, he'd grant me my heart's desire. I was speechless. You only hear about things like that in kids' stories, but I was excited too. You read about this, but you never think anything like it's going to happen to you. He asked me if I wanted something. After a little bit of thought, I smiled as I came up with what I believed was the best wish. "Oh? What'd you wish for? A new bass boat, a condo down in Miami, lifetime supply of mackerel?" my dad asked. He and my brother were laughing again like it was the biggest joke ever. I told him that every time I put my lobster pot in the water, I wanted to catch him. I wanted to catch him again and again and get his wish over and over again. "Smart," my brother said, "like telling a genie you want infinite wishes or something." That's what I thought too, but turned out I really hadn't thought it through very well at all. I spent the next 2 weeks pulling him up again and again, and every time I would wish for something different. I'd wish for 100 grand in my bank account. I'd wish for a brand new lobster boat. I'd wish for 100 lobsters, each of them 20 pounds, and each time he would grant it for me. The old guy really seemed to like coming up again and again. And after a while, I started to think he looked forward to our daily routine. "Sounds pretty good," my brother told me. "So why is it a bad thing?" Well, the other day I yanked him up and was getting ready to make my wish when my cell phone rang. I usually can't get service out there. Leave it to your aunt to know exactly how to get a hold of me when she wants me. It was her, all right. She was mad. She started yelling, really laying into me. Guess I forgot to do something before I went out that day, and she let me know about it. She told me I was worthless, that I couldn't do anything right, and that all I was good for was catching lobsters because I'd never been good for much else, and she couldn't remember why she married me in the first place. I sat there listening to her, and my luck had been so good that maybe I just didn't think about what I was doing. I looked her dead in the phone and said, I wish she would shut the hell up and get the fuck away from me. Well, she stopped talking pretty quick. Thought maybe I'd lost her. Then I looked down, and sure enough, she was still on the phone with me. I couldn't understand what had happened, and then I looked over at the lobster and realized what I had done. He was looking down at his beer, and I didn't think I'd ever seen him look so distraught. It was like something had been ripped away from him, something deep down in his soul, and without it, he was just sort of empty. I'd wished your Aunt Sheila away, and I was horrified. Then I thought, hey, no problem. I'll just have the lobster bring her back again. I threw him back in and pulled him back up again, telling him I wanted your Aunt Sheila back, but he just sat there and looked at me like I was an idiot or something. Threw him back in, pulled him up again, but he still wouldn't bring her back. I was crying by that time. I brought him up for a 5th time, but no matter how many times I put him down and brought him up again, he never brought her back. We were all a little speechless by then, but Dad still must have thought this was the punchline he'd been waiting for. Boy, did you luck out. Sheila's a real ballbuster. Seems like you got a little piece and still got a magic lobster. My Uncle Gary turned and looked at him. It was the closest I think I've ever seen him to putting his hands on my dad. That ain't funny, Bruce. I know what you guys think about my wife. I know you think she's a harridan and a ballbuster, and I'd be better off without her. But in truth, that woman's the most precious thing to me I've ever had. I don't always like the way she talks to me, but I love that woman more than anything. I'd sooner trade places with that lobster than try to live without her. We all just sat there quietly for a little while, looking at our beers and weighing what Uncle Gary had said. It's pretty terrible when you thought about it. Clearly, he was taking it pretty hard. We didn't see my uncle for a couple of days, and Dad said he wasn't answering his phone either. We were worried that maybe he'd hurt himself, but when he appeared back in the spoke one night, we all breathed a sigh of relief. He'd probably just been out on a long voyage, something that all of us were guilty of from time to time. We went to sit with him and offered to buy him a drink, and our relief lasted until he started talking. I wonder what it's like to be one of those lobsters. All 3 of us turned to stare at him, not quite sure what he was getting at. What, like the ones we catch? I've been talking with that black bastard that I keep pulling up in the lobster trap. He says it's nice down there, and that he's been down there for an eternity. No way. The oldest lobster that's ever been found was 150 years old at the best. My uncle turned and looked at me as if I were the biggest fool he'd ever laid eyes on. That's because some of them don't get caught, kid. They live down there in the deeps for thousands of years. Some of them go their whole lives without ever seeing a human being. They love it down there. It's their home. They guard it jealously. They live and live and live. And they're at peace down there, where nobody bothers them. I wonder sometimes what it must be like to have peace like that. I wonder what it's like to live that carefree. When was the last time we ever saw my uncle? A couple of days later, they found his boat out on the water with nobody in it. They say it's like he just abandoned it and jumped off into the water to see what he could find out there. After the conversation I'd had with him, I think that might be just what he did. One more thing they found, and it makes me think his story might have actually been true. They said they found a lobster pot out there on his boat with the biggest dead lobster anyone had ever seen inside. They said the sucker was massive, easily 50 pounds of rotten lobster meat, and he was still in that trap that my uncle had hauled him up in. I sure hope my uncle made it to the water when he made his last wish, because I think he went to see the place that the lobsters talk about. I think he went to find his peace in the depths of the ocean, where no one will ever find him again.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel. There's so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so You won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.